Hello and welcome to the second video on this channel. I hope you're having a great day out there. Now, to improve your relationship, to really improve it in a way that's going to stick and last, then you need to travel underneath the behaviours, your partner's and your own, and what's showing on the surface. You need to deep dive underneath and understand patterns and systems. Because the understanding of life involves the understanding of patterns. In today's video, we're going to start this deep dive into patterns and how change actually happens in relationships so you can start improving yours today. My name is Dadley-Moore and I'm here to help you improve your communication, better manage your conflicts and disagreements, and in doing so create more ease and reach higher heights in your relationship. So before we start, I want to give you a free guide to increase your argument IQ. Have you ever had an argument and regretted it? Would you like to argue less in your relationship? Well, if you do want to better manage and minimize and stop arguments, then increasing your argument IQ is a must. This guide exposes the hidden underlying truths of arguing. It's a unique approach that's helped thousands of people level up. Read it and you'll never look at arguing the same again. The link's in the description below, so please pause the video and download your free argument upgrade now. Your relationship will thank you. Okay, improving your relationship, all about patterns. What do I mean when I say that? Well, put simply, we are pattern animals. Our brains couldn't cope with living every moment of every day brand new. So we create patterns, we store patterns, we retrieve patterns, we follow patterns. We all live the vast majority of our life on automatic pilot. Now, we have individual patterns. I wave my hands around a lot, but I'm not thinking to myself, Simon, move your left hand a little bit to the left and up a bit. I'm not. It's a pattern. I'm sitting, and if I wasn't actively using muscles to sit, I'd fall over. Thankfully, I don't have to think about that. I retrieve a pattern on sitting, and I follow that pattern. Everything is patterns. Palahniuk says there are only patterns. Patterns on top of patterns, patterns that affect other patterns, patterns hidden by patterns, patterns within patterns. And he wasn't just talking about behavioural patterns or body patterns here either. Again, the understanding of life involves the understanding of patterns. Now, follow me here. Coming back to me sitting, if all those decades ago I created a healthy pattern on how to sit, then I'll sit in a healthy way. If I create an unhealthy sitting pattern, then I'll continue to sit in that unhealthy way until I create a healthier pattern of sitting. Everything we do is patterned. Breathing, walking, driving, talking. These are our individual patterns. But in our relationships, it's really important to understand we also create patterns. And it's actually probably more accurate to say it's the patterns that create our relationship. Relationships are made up of predictable, habitual ways in which two people or more people go about being around each other. Every week I meet with people who can accurately predict the interactions with their partner. The words spoken, the tone of voice, the body language, even the look on their partner's face. Can you predict how your partner interacts with you in certain situations? I would say most likely, absolutely yes. And they will be able to predict you too. Now, first up, it's important to understand here that what you're predicting here is not your partner. You're predicting the relationship patterns that exist between you and your partner. This is your partner's behaviour in relationship to you. Again, you're not predicting your partner, you're predicting your relationship. I'll return to this later when I bring in the power of three. But for now, back to patterns, healthy and unhealthy. If you know your partner will be present to listen to you after a hard day at work, then this is an example of a healthy pattern. And healthy patterns create healthy relationships. Of course, unhealthy patterns create unhealthy relationships. And I think if in our couple relationships we reach a certain percentage of unhealthy patterns, well, I think that's when our relationships often come to an end. Now, there are many common unhealthy relationship patterns, and I want to highlight two of the most common to you. And the first one I call attack, defend. And it goes like this. One person feels like they're under attack, and they feel the very human need to defend themselves or justify or explain. But at that moment that they do, they've just joined the pattern, they've completed the circuit, and now we get attack, defend, attack, defend, attack, defend, attack, defend, which so often moves into attack, 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 attack. And this will go on for as long as two people continue to play their part in the pattern. Now this, as long as both people choose to dance this way, it can go on for minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, even years, but it needs both people to play their part. It cannot happen without both of you. This is the attacker and the defender. They need each other. Is this a pattern that you recognise? I'd be incredibly surprised if you didn't. Now, one of the most usual ways out of this pattern is for one person to just refuse to do their half. They walk away, they don't send a text back, they refuse to respond, they just go silent and they avoid and withdraw from the situation. Again, I'm sure you'll recognise this. And when this happens, a new pattern emerges because we cannot exist in the absence of patterns. There'll always be patterns. There are only patterns. And this new pattern I call pursue, withdraw, where one person withdraws from the interaction, and as they withdraw, the other person now more and more really wants to interact and talk. And they escalate, getting louder and pushier to try and get this interaction happening. And the more they do this, the more the other person intensifies their need to withdraw. And this pursue, withdraw pushes two people further and further and further apart. Is this one that you recognise in your relationship? Or maybe you've experienced it before in other relationships? Again, I'll be surprised if you haven't. Given that relationships are made up of patterns, that it's the patterns that create the relationships, then if you want to create change in your relationship, you need to interrupt and change the patterns. Now, to interrupt the pattern, all it takes is for one person, any person, to change what they normally do, to do something different, and to maintain that difference, withstanding any pull to go back to the old. Relationship patterns cannot continue unless two people play their part. Now, there's a saying that most of us know. It takes two to tango. There's a second part to that saying that not enough of us do know. I had to become a mediator to learn it. And the complete saying is, it takes two to tango, it only takes one to stop. Anyone can stop a tango. All they've got to do is stop tangoing. And at that point, the tango is no longer, it's dead. It's important here, as I explain this, that I also explain to you what happens when people do interrupt a pattern, because things often initially get worse. The reason for this is you've thrown a spanner in the pattern. You're doing something that's different to what's familiar and predictable. And for a short period of time at least, things become patternless. There's chaos. And the person who's still doing the tango will try and pull you back in to get you to do the old dance with them. Now, it helps to see it this way. Imagine if you were actually doing the literal tango dance with your partner, something that you'd rehearsed and performed time after time. And imagine halfway through, you decide that you're going to stop doing the tango. Well, again, at that moment, obviously, there's no tango anymore. But your partner who's still doing the tango, they'll be the ones in the right, and you'll be in the wrong. The initial reaction is often, no, you come back here and do the tango like you used to. Put your foot there, put your arm here. This is what we normally do. Do the predictable and the familiar, because even if it's unhealthy, in that predictability and familiarity is some degree of safety. Now, imagine a different scenario. Imagine going back to primary school, and if you're in the school play, and imagine if you turned up on performance night to the school play with a new script, and you start to read off your new script. You'd be in the wrong. It would throw chaos into the play, and every other member of the play is going to try and get you to pick up the right script and do and say what you're supposed to do. This is what we know. This is what we're doing. But if you never go back to the tango, and if you withstand that pull, and if you never pick up that old script, then the tango is no longer, and something new has to happen in that primary school play. It's not going to look the same. Different happens when we do different. The problem can be, though, is that when things initially get worse, when people get louder and they get pushier, and they try and bring us back in, and it's very easy to accept, oh well, I tried that and it didn't work. Things got worse. And then the invitation is to slip back into our old patterns, and that's how change never happens. We just keep rehearsing and replaying the same old scripts, and we keep getting the same old play or the same old dance. Again, I repeat, to change a pattern, all it takes is for one person, any one person, to stop what they normally do and do something different, and then maintain that difference for long enough that different then happens, to never go back to the old dance. Now when you do this, when the dust settles, you're going to end up with one of three things. Either you're going to end up with a different that's better, or you're going to end up with a different version of the same old bad, or you're going to end up with a different that's worse. Those are the only three possibilities. But they're not all equal probability. And with some clever planning, you can stack the cards in your favour so that you've got the highest possible chance that the different you do creates a different better when the dust settles. So Simon, where does the threesome come into it? What's this about the power of three? Well, the power of three is another exceptionally important area of understanding when it comes to couple relationships and change. In any two-person relationship, it's important to understand there are actually three of you. Now, maybe we could say that there are actually three entities. There's you, and then there's your partner, that's 1 and 2, and then there's your relationship, which is a completely separate entity. Quite clearly, the relationship that exists between you and your partner, it's not who you are. It doesn't define you, and it's also not who your partner is. Quite clearly, it's a very separate thing. And this separate thing, this relationship, is made up of all the patterns, the dynamics, the dysfunctions. It's the way the two of you dance together. It's what you save for each other when you're in each other's company. That's the relationship. And it's almost always the relationship that holds the problems, not the people. Now, I'll go back to what I was explaining before. When you predict your partner's behaviour, when you experience your partner's behaviour, you're predicting and experiencing their behaviour in relationship to you. You are part of this. We are all part of the behaviour and the communication that others give towards us. Now, if you haven't yet seen the first video on this channel on wanting better communication in your relationship, the description's in the link below, so please go and watch it for further explanation here. But where I'm getting to here in relationships, the dynamics, the dysfunctions, they rarely reside inside either person. They reside inside that third entity, the relationship. And therefore, when it comes to creating change, it's the relationship that requires our focus. This is helpful because, again, we have influence here. The reality is you can't change your partner. Your partner is the only one that can change or choose to change themselves. And they can't change you. If you're going to change, it'll come because you choose to change. But you both own half the relationship. And follow me here, this is so important. It can never be more or less than half. It can't be 49%, it can't be 51%, it's exactly half. Now, I'm not talking about blame or fault here. And for the sake of this discussion, let's just give your partner 100% to blame for something. We could probably have a whole nother video on that. But let's give them 100% blame for something. They would then use their half of the relationship to feed that in. And then you'd use your half of the relationship to go, well, what am I going to do now? How am I going to respond to that? It's half each. Now, the key is that when any one person changes what they put in their half, the relationship changes. It cannot stay the same. When half of any whole changes, the whole changes. When 10% of any whole changes, the whole changes. It cannot stay the same. We have so much more power, every single one of us. We have so much more power. Power might be the wrong word. We have so much more influence on changing our relationships than we often realise because we own half. As I spoke about in the last video, it's really important that we don't get trapped into looking outward and pointing our finger at others. If only she'd stop doing that, if only he'd clean up after himself, things would be so much easier around here. Now, this might be true, but as long as we stay in that position, we put ourselves in a helpless, hopeless position where the only way that change can happen is if our partner does that change for us. There's nothing we can do about it. And life's not like that. If we want change, if you want change, do the change, create the change. Stuck is a choice. You can either empower yourself by creating change in your relationship, or you can give your power away and hope for change. And here we come back to the learning from the first video. The finger has to point this way. Again, if you've got any questions about any of this, the patterns, the three, if any of it doesn't make sense, if it's not clear to you, please ask in the comments below or email me. It's really important to me that you understand this. These are such fundamental, foundational understandings that all of the rest of your relationship work will be built on. And if you're living in a relationship that involves emotional or physical abuse, if you're frightened or unsure of your safety, please seek professional help. Okay, what now? What would I like you to take away from this video? Well, the first step to any change is awareness. So please start looking around in your day for patterns. Start to see patterns everywhere, in your work, in your play, with your friends, but especially in your relationship. Start to look for situations where your partner's predictable, and then have a look at your own behaviour and your own predictable actions. He does this, and then I do that, and then he does this, and we always end up here. These are well-worn grooves. These are patterns. And once you identify a pattern, then ask yourself, is this pattern helping me create the relationship that I want? And if it is, congratulations, well done. You start to then identify your part in the pattern and keep at it. Keep doing it. But if it's not, if this pattern's harming or hindering or limiting your relationship, then the question to ask yourself is, what can I do differently? Point the finger this way and get on with it. Now, you can work on this on your own or with your partner. Again, these are fundamental understandings about communication and behaviour and how change happens in relationships. So please, any comments, any questions, leave them below. What patterns have you identified? What have you done so far that's been helpful? I'd love to hear from you. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video to the people that you love. Let's all level up. Remember, there's a free guide on increasing your argument IQ. Download that. It's in the description below. And if you haven't seen last week's video, go and check that out. Next week, I'll be uploading another video. More key building blocks and understanding about communication. And the one next week, it changes everything. It also involves a confession. So have a great week and be kind to yourself out there.